Today we explore the history of this abandoned castle and its strange connection to Game of Thrones Hodor. Traveling along the east of Scotland, we discovered the castle forgotten and hidden among trees and huge banks of thorn bushes. We are excited to tell its story as we have not been able to find any other video to date made of its interior or of its often strange story of assassination, torture, betrayal, and witchcraft. The origins of the castle stretch back to an official recorded date of 1545. However, many historians believe it was in fact built as early as 1300, which I believe is more correct, and you'll see this for yourself as we explore the site. Abandoned Castle of the lady who inspired Game of Thrones, Hodor. It was constructed on a rise above a stream and was often compared in appearance to the famous Craigmillar Castle. Whatever the real date of its creation, the lands were owned by the noble Lavelle family. The Lavelle name means wolf in French. They were a Norman family that lived in England and later expanded into Ireland and Scotland. Their English branch was famous for Philip Lavelle having gained the title of Treasurer of England under Henry III. He was later accused of taking bribes from Jewish merchants and was fined and died of great grief in 1258. Over the generations, they gained more power until Francis Lavelle became the favorite of King Richard III and was bestowed many titles, becoming so hated he was included in a popular poem, The Rat, the Cat, and Lavelle our Dog, govern all England under the hog. After Richard III's loss and death at Bosworth, he fled to France. He returned to fight in Ireland on the side of the fake Duke of York, the impostor child, Lambert Simnel. He then fought in the Battle of Stoke, where he was rumored to have drowned in a river while escaping. However, in 1708, records state that his house was renovated and a large vault was found underneath, where a whole skeleton of a man sitting with a cap at a table with a book, paper, and pen was unearthed. Many believed Lord Lavelle had hidden here and been locked in or forgotten to slowly starve. The Scottish branch of the family moved to the castle's lands by 1183, having lived on the border of Roxburgh before this. James Lavelle died in the Battle of Harlaw in 1411, and his son Alexander inherited and married Catherine Douglas, the woman central to our story and the creation of George R.R. Martin's Hodor. She lived in the Blackfriars Convent at Perth, where she was the lady-in-waiting of Joan Beaufort, the wife of King James I of Scotland. James had been crowned after being a prisoner of the English for 18 years. On his return and crowning, he was viewed as English due to his education and marriage there. He became more unpopular due to grand construction projects like Linlithgow Palace and his summary arrest of multiple nobles, including the execution of the powerful Murdoch Stewart, Duke of Albany, and his two sons. In 1436, King James I attacked Roxburgh Castle, which was then owned by the English and had been the home of the Lavelle family. The Scottish army was to retreat in chaos in the face of English reinforcements, leaving their cannons behind. Shortly afterwards, James was nearly arrested during a council meeting he held by Sir Robert Graham. Graham was exiled but quickly returned, secretly joining Walter Stewart, the Earl of Athol's employ. Walter had overseen the execution and gained much from the death of his relative Murdoch Stewart, who was also descended from King Robert II. He quickly became a favorite of James I and in line for the throne after James's son, but the gifts showered on him by James were in time taken away, and he became surrounded by the vengeful supporters of Murdoch, who were now his servants. On February 4th, another council was held in Perth, which the king did not attend, but fatefully, Walter Stewart and others did. On February 20th, 1437, Catherine Douglas was then to enter history as a hero in a very unique way. As James I stayed sleeping at Blackfriars, 30 men, led by the still exiled Sir Robert Graham, came to the bedroom door looking to kill the king. Treacherously, the chamberlain, Robert Stewart, had removed the beam used to secure the door, having been told of the coming attack by co-conspirator Walter Stewart, the Earl of Athol, who was his grandfather. Catherine courageously put her arm where the metal or wooden bar would have been, briefly stopping the assassins charging up the stairs and giving time for the king to remove some floorboards and escape into the sewers below the room. The door was forced, horribly breaking her arm. The raised boards were discovered, and James was found in the sewers below, where he was stabbed to death by Sir Robert Graham, having been trapped by the recent chance walling off of the tunnel to stop tennis balls being lost in it. Catherine somehow escaped the attack with the wounded queen and lived afterwards with the official new name of Kate Barlass, given to her for her deeds. The old phrase, "Katie bar the door," is thought to be derived from her story. The creator of Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, is known to be a wide reader of history and has said Game of Thrones takes much inspiration from the English War of the Roses. Scenes in the series and the books, like the Red Wedding, are widely regarded to be taken from Scottish history. The Red Wedding is thought to be based upon the Black Dinner, where in 1440, the teenage 6th Earl of Douglas and his child brother David were invited to a feast by William Crichton, the Chancellor of Scotland. During the dinner, the head of a black bull was dropped on the table and the two were dragged outside, tried for treason, and beheaded. It's no stretch from here to connect Game of Thrones' Hodor to Kate. While the true meaning of the name Hodor was kept a mystery, it was revealed in his death scene to be short for Hold the Door. In this scene, he held a door against the undead to save the future King Bran Stark from killers that are trying to break through. His given name is revealed to be Willis and to have been replaced when Bran entered his body in the past, where he became Hodor due to his constant repeating and post-trauma garbling of the phrase, "Hold the door." After the assassination of James I, the heroine Kate had escaped with the Queen to meet up with her son James, who had escaped from the custody of John Spence, another conspirator. With the support of the Earl of Angus and William Crichton, they raised armies and quickly captured Robert Stewart, who confessed to his crimes. Earl Walter was then taken prisoner by Angus and tortured for 3 days. He was put in a cart and placed on a crane, where he was lifted in the air and dropped partway to stretch and break his joints. The next day, he was put in a pillory and had a glowing hot crown with "King of all traitors" stamped on it placed on his head. He was dragged through the streets, burned with glowing hot pincers, and blinded. Later that day, on March 25th, James II was crowned king at 6 years of age. The next day, the still-living Earl had his intestines pulled out and burned in front of him before being beheaded. His body was cut into 4 pieces, the organs burned, and the rest sent across the kingdom as a warning. That same day, Robert Stewart was executed, and shortly after, Sir Robert Graham was captured by his former allies and also tried and executed on April 9th. Catherine Douglas, now famous and known as Kate Barlass, married Alexander Lavelle and became the lady of the castle that we explore today. The painter and poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti was famously to write of her in 1881 in The King's Tragedy. Then the queen cried, "Catherine, keep the door, and I to this will suffice." At her word I rose all dazed to my feet, and my heart was fire and ice. Like iron felt my arm, as through the staple I made it pass. Alack, it was flesh and bone, no more. 'Twas Catherine Douglas sprang to the door, but I fell back, Kate Barlass. Despite their fame, the Lavelles were to vanish from history when Henry Lavelle was denounced as a rebel after his failure to appear in court in 1572, and their last mention was in 1607 as 2 local women landowners who did not carry on the family name. Sir Thomas Lyon of Aldbar inherited the land after this, but in 1612 it was mentioned as being a ruin. Let's explore what is left of this lost place. The first thing you're confronted with is the gatehouse. It was recorded as being built in 1545 and ruined by 1682, but you will quickly notice much of the castle is built with different stone and another build pattern. This square tower is both brick and sandstone, and clearly less built for defense, which points to the 1500s build date. In this period, with the advent of cannons, castles were becoming more symbols of status and power, and were slowly losing their thick walls in favor of ornamentations. The brick would have been from renovations and rebuilding in 1810 as the castle transitioned to a utilitarian stable block. Further inside are smaller walls, much more damaged and made of sandstone. These contrast with the thicker outer walls made of different stone and likely built between 1300 and 1400. This doorway still has a wood frame. Small side doors like this one would have been punched through the castle wall to allow easier traffic to the newer outbuildings. This back range would have been devoted to work-related structures. The courtyard formed in the middle is roughly 70 feet across. The square additions on this end would have served as the main living area in the 1500s. The arched gate would have been the single entrance at this date. On the far side of the courtyard is another structure. Here it is clear that the entire wall, having collapsed, was rebuilt in the 1800s to connect the two ancient round towers. Holes above indicate beams that would have supported multiple stories of structure. A tree's roots have pushed through the wall, taking down the newer section near the cave-like tower entrance. Upper chambers have intact vaulted ceilings. The slot in the wall was clearly for archers and was changed to be square to allow the use of muskets. The large window here, with green tile, is a hint at how the interior of this section would have been a stable. By now, I'm sure you're asking yourself where these later 1800s additions and the brick is from. This is tied directly to the later life of the castle after the Lavelles died off as a family. By 1612, the castle became the property of the Mall family, who became Earls of Panmure in 1646. By 1684, under their ownership, it was written that the castle is an old, ruinous, demolished house, but a very pleasant place. During this time, the castle and a huge old ash tree near it became associated with the witch, Griselle Jaffray. Griselle was a Quaker and the wife of a merchant. She was tried in 1669 and executed by strangling at the Sea Gate of Dundee, where her body was burned. All records of her trial were destroyed, and many suspect she was framed by rival merchants and those who hated Quakers. Legends say her son was a sailor, and having come back from sea to town, he found her body burning and had fled back to the sea, never to return. She was the last witch killed in the region, and a flame mural dedicated to her still lies on the sidewalks of Dundee. The Earl of Panmure had their title created for Sir Patrick Mall, who owned the rundown castle and was a follower of King Charles I. The title was amazingly gone by 1716, however. In 1715, the 4th Earl James had marched out of his main dwelling, Panmure House, to fight on the side of the Jacobites and install James Francis Edward Stuart as king. He had lost, and in turn lost his lands and title, fleeing to stay with the Pretender, where he died in mainland Europe. The family titles in time did return in 1743 under William Mall, but instead in Ireland, where they became extinct without heirs in 1782. The title was created one last time in 1831 under William, son of the Earl of Dalhousie, who had inherited the castle and Panmure House from the exiled Mall family. Under him in 1810, it is likely the improvements and renovations to the castle that we've noted had occurred. The castle was rebuilt with a building to the west, and a new wall was added to the south and north, creating a courtyard for use as a stable. Eventually, with changing fortunes, it was to fall out of use and become abandoned again. In time, the family's main seat, Panmure House, too, would also become abandoned, forming a looming and massive derelict estate that was considered the second most important building in Scotland behind Holyrood Cathedral. It was sadly demolished by explosives in 1955 in a massive loss to history, while the older castle was left to be forgotten in time. Above this partly blocked tower room, the crumbling wall reveals 500 years of layered construction from 1300 to 1810. It's amazing how intact this 700-year-old ceiling has remained. Across the courtyard to the left lies the second 1500s tower. Along its top are the traces of a later 1800s roof. The brambles are very thick on the top, and for the first time ever exploring, we take a dive. Luckily, everything's fine. This large arch in the middle of the two towers may be from the 1500s or the 1800s and would have been a carriage entrance. It seems hard to defend, but might have acted as a double-gated structure between the two towers. We leave the castle as we found it. With few signs of any visitors and almost no mention today in record, it seems likely it will slowly crumble and become more engulfed in thorns and trees until one day it is truly gone. Yet, it's comforting to know that somehow, despite this, its unique story of bravery and its heroine will live on in popular culture, inspiring writers and watchers still to this very day. Join us next time as we explore the ruins, the mystery, and the legend of an abandoned necromancer's dungeon. Thank you for watching. For more unique abandoned places and their lost stories, follow us today by subscribing and hitting the bell icon. Until next time.